Hi, I'm Stephen Flanagan with Therap Services. Today I'm going to be talking to you about HIPAA compliance and using the security risk assessment tool offered by the Office of the National Coordinator. So the Office of the National Coordinator, in coordination with the Office of Civil Rights and the Office of the General Counsel, has put out a security risk assessment for you to fill out for your agency to review its HIPAA policies and to respond with how you stand up to those policies. So we've talked to a lot of agencies across the country about HIPAA and how they're protecting information and how this relates to Therap. And we wanted to put this together to help you guys to fill out your survey that you're going to be sending in to the ONC as far as your HIPAA policies and as far as policies that Therap has in place and what security mechanisms we're handling. Here's the website of the Office of the National Coordinator. We're going to go ahead and pull up the security risk assessment tool that you'll have to fill out. The security risk assessment tool comes in 3 parts: administrative safeguards, physical safeguards, and technical safeguards. And the tool can be downloaded from the Office of the National Coordinator site. The question on this part of the SRA can be divided into the following security standards. I'm going to go ahead and place these so you can review. Security Management Process Standard, Assigned Security Responsibility Standard, Workforce Security Standard, Information Access Management Standard, Security Awareness and Training Standard, Security Incident Procedure Standard, a Contingency Plan Standard, Evaluation Standard, requirements pertaining to business associates, and policies, procedures, and documentation requirements. So the first of these standards asks whether or not your organization practices a regular review of information security standards. Therap enables authorized agency users to view and track activities using the activity tracking module available in the system. Authorized users can generate reports on access and privileges to the system, and password management system is available to let agencies practice their own password management policy. And the next question, does your practice have a list that includes all members of the workforce and roles assigned to each, and the corresponding access that each role enables for your practice's facilities, information systems, electronic devices, and ePHI? In this case, Therap has a multi-level access control that's going to restrict user access based on roles and privileges. So each user will be assigned a caseload, and each user is also assigned a role dictating what they can and cannot access in the system. Agencies using Therap can assign users with caseloads and roles according to the organization's policy. These access privileges define the permission that users are granted for documenting and reporting on individuals. Next question, does your agency have policies and procedures for access authorization and segregation of duties? Security in Therap is handled a couple of ways. Every staff is going to have their own account, and that account is limited to what it can see and do in the system. For instance, my account, I may only be able to see the individuals at my house that I work at. And since I'm a manager at that house, I can review forms and I can do reports on those forms, but I can't approve certain forms that may be done by the director of residential at my agency. This works for multiple facets of security in Therap. Every staff is going to have a user role dictating what they can and cannot do. Can they view a form? Can they delete a form? Can they approve a form? Can they submit a form? Can they see something that's been submitted? Can they see it if it's not been approved yet? Are they able to add review comments? This process just continues throughout the system. So you have that level of super role access, and you also on top of that have a caseload so that your access is limited to the individuals that you work with. Does your practice keep records that detail when each workforce member satisfactorily completes periodic training? Therap's training management system allows you to access and keep track of all of your staff's trainings and certifications. Next question. Does your practice include password management as part of its awareness and training program? In this case, yes. Therap has multiple levels of password policy that can be instituted for your agency. Therap provides the following password management capabilities: expiration age for all passwords, a maximum number of incorrect passwords tolerated for account locking, a time frame for incorrect passwords, a minimum length and characters for passwords, and users are able to receive warnings prior to the expiration of their passwords. Does your practice consider how natural or man-made disasters could damage its information systems or prevent access to ePHI and develop policies and procedures for responding to such a situation? As far as disaster recovery, we actually get this question a lot. Therap has 2 different sites and multiple servers where we're backing up the information continuously. We offer offline forms for all of the modules in Therap. Should the system go down, you can always add information to the offline forms and then upload them to Therap right after. Does your practice have policies and procedures for creation and secure storage of an electronic copy of ePHI that would be used in the case of a system breakdown or disaster? Therap Services application is housed and maintained on servers at 2 separate sites. Therap Services is committed to service availability and data security and uses a highly redundant set of hardware and software. Therap's goal is to further ensure that data is never lost once on any of its servers. Does your practice have an emergency mode operations plan to ensure the continuation of critical business processes that must occur to protect the availability and security of ePHI immediately after a crisis situation? Therap has extensive backup plans to operate and ensure uninterrupted service in an emergency mode. The servers are at different physical locations so that if one site goes down, the other site is still operational. The questions on the next part of the SRA can be divided into the following types: Facility Access Control Standard, Workstation Use Standard, Workstation Security Standard, and Device and Media Control Standard. If a disaster happens, does your practice have another way to get into the facility or off-site storage location and get into your ePHI? In order to respond to emergency or other occurrences, Therap runs multiple sites. And this is when one site is down, the other site ensures smooth running and application and services. Does your organization create backup files prior to the movement of equipment or media to ensure that data is available when it's needed? Therap's existing data backup procedures ensures that the system services are not interrupted. While the system is operating at a live site, data and key system level activity is replicated on the alternate site. Do you have maintenance records that include the history of physical changes, upgrades, and other modifications for your facilities and the rooms where information systems and ePHI are kept? This is maintained by the secure site where the servers are hosted. Documentation of repairs and modifications are also maintained by Therap, as equipment are regularly checked and modified if necessary to ensure they are functioning properly. The final section of the SRA tool includes the following sections: Access Control Standards, Audit Control Standards, Integrity Standards, Person or Entity Authentication Standards, and Transmission Security Standards. Does your practice have policies and procedures in place to grant access to ePHI based on the person or software programs appropriate for their role? Therap's role-based access mechanism enables agencies to allocate access to electronic protected health information to selected workforce members who need to deal with such information due to the nature of their work. Does your practice analyze the activities performed by all of its workforce and service providers to identify the extent to which each needs access to ePHI? Therap's activity tracking module ensures an activity logging of all access to any of the forms within Therap. Additionally, the IP address and router information is stored for that access. This shows who's been using the system and which forms they were looking at, as well as when. Does your practice have policies and procedures in place for the assignment of a unique identifier for each authorized user? Therap has 3 security mechanisms for any user to access the system: a login name, a password, and the provider code. For each user in the system, the login name, password, and provider code combination will be unique. If this is not matched correctly, then that account can be locked. Does your practice activate an automatic log-off that terminates an electronic session after a predetermined period of user inactivity? Therap has a session expiration mechanism that will log off users after a predetermined amount of inactivity. This can be set by the agency, so you can set your agency to expire after 15 minutes or 45 minutes of inactivity within Therap. Does your practice have policies and procedures for implementing mechanisms that can encrypt and decrypt ePHI? At Therap, all ePHI is stored, exchanged, and maintained in a secure way which ensures the integrity of the information. Does your practice have policies and procedures for protecting ePHI from unauthorized modification or destruction? All information that's entered into Therap is time and date stamped. That includes the user's name, title, their IP address, the location, server information, all part of their electronic signature. All of this information can be updated and tracked. No user can modify this data stored in Therap without going through the application. The system does not allow users to permanently delete information, and if any information is deleted, it's stored in the system with a deleted state. Does your practice have mechanisms to corroborate that ePHI has not been altered, modified, or destroyed in an unauthorized manner? Again, here Therap's activity tracking is going to track information being entered into the system and by whom. Whenever any information gets updated, that information gets stored in an update activity log. Information can only be deleted or deactivated by authorized users. In such cases, the information is still available in the system and can be viewed by users with the proper access privileges. Does your practice know the authentication capabilities, its information systems, and electronic devices to ensure that a uniquely identified user is the one claimed? Each user at an agency is given a unique login name and password for identification. Users need to access the system with their login name, their password, and the provider code. This ensures only the authorized user is able to access the system on that account. Once that user is able to log in, they'll reset their password, and that password becomes their secured access point. Moreover, once users have accessed the system, their level of access is strictly determined by their user role and caseload. Finally, does your practice take steps to reduce the risk that ePHI can be intercepted and modified when it's being sent electronically? All electronic protected health information in Therap can be securely sent through the secure communication system within the agency. The SCOM module is designed to ensure protected information cannot be sent in an un-HIPAA compliant way to unauthorized people in or outside of an agency.